Hey guys, today I thought I'd cover the LG Nexus 5X as it's actually a great budget viable option, so without further ado, let's get straight into the video. So first things first is the display, and it's definitely one of the centerpieces of this phone. It's a 5.2 inch 1080p IPS LCD panel and it clocks in at about 423 pixels per inch. It's got surprisingly good viewing angles for an LCD, it gets bright enough outdoors, it's plenty colour accurate, although sadly it doesn't quite reach the height of the OLED panel used on the larger 6P, but nonetheless it's one of the centre parts of this phone. So the bezels surrounding the display take Google's signature Nexus sized look, with a sizable chin and forehead around the display, and they also house the dual front-facing speakers. On the topic of the speakers though, they kind of let the phone down in my opinion. They're tinny, they don't get especially loud, and they distort at really low volumes, so I wouldn't say that they complement the great display as well as you might hope they did. Luckily though, the build of the 5X is relatively redeeming. It sports a plastic encasement and Gorilla Glass 3 covering the display. The Nexus also sports a two-colour design with plastic side rails and a smooth back, which is actually really ergonomic and proves very comfortable in the hand. The Nexus logo and LG print have a nice contrast to the body, so the 5X is actually fairly good to look at. So another thing I really like about this phone is the fingerprint scanner. It's ever so slightly raised and you've got this nice chrome rim around it which fits in really nicely and ties in nicely with the Nexus font along the bottom of the phone. In terms of the placement, it's good. I personally have large hands so it's a bit of a stretch, but mostly my finger rests on it naturally, so it's a good fit. In terms of colours, you get the same black ring around the main frame of the phone, but you can get it in ice blue, white, or a contrasted black option on the back of the phone. The colours are slightly tinged yellow over time. My model has a few scrapes along the edges, but otherwise it's pretty good at deflecting fingerprints and scratches. So in terms of size, the 5X is actually a pretty mid-ranger in size. Obviously the screen seems fairly small for a phone in 2019 with all these latest bezel-less trends, and considering that it could potentially push a screen that's at least 6 inches, but compared to something with less screen for the size like the iPhone 6s, it's actually a pretty compelling sell. So in terms of ports, you get the dying breed of the headphone jack, like you get those anymore, and it's sandwiched in between that double plastic construction with a noise cancellation mic on the top of the phone and a standard mic on the bottom. It's also nice to see that even at this price point, the 5X packs a USB-C port and even supports fast charging speeds. Camera-wise, I really like that the 5X has a bunch of similar features to the latest Pixel phones, like the lens blur, photosphere, and even HDR Plus capabilities, and the 5X uses the same primary 12.3 megapixel sensor as the larger 6P, but in a much smaller profile, and this also in-houses a 5 megapixel selfie shooter. In all fairness, the main photos of this thing are actually pretty good, with great dynamic range and Google's notorious strengths in image processing. So the main point you're probably wondering is battery life. How bad is it? And I've got to be honest with you, you'd be surprised it's actually pretty decent, as well, on my model anyway. It's a surprising turn for the better. You get a 2700 mAh battery on board, surviving a comfortable 4 hours of on-screen usage. But then again, you have to consider that I got this refurbished. Obviously, you've got to leave space for battery deterioration over time, but nonetheless, it's a pretty decent driver. So on paper, the specs-wise, and the 5X packs the Snapdragon 808. You get 2 gigs of RAM and 16 or 32 gigs of non-expandable onboard storage. I also benchmarked this thing, and Antutu scores topped about 71,000 with the inbuilt Adreno 418. However, I'd say it will definitely be fine for regular light gaming, but don't put it through anything overly CPU intensive. Geekbench also ran pretty well, the scores I tested peaking about 1300 on the single core end and about 3000 at the multi-core end. Again, I'd say it's definitely fine for light gaming, but nothing overly CPU intensive like PUBG or Fortnite. Considering it's £90, $120 equivalent, despite the lackluster speakers, plastic construction and potentially weak battery, I genuinely say that this is a genuinely approvable buy for anyone on a really tight budget. Anyway, thank you guys for watching, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video.